For thought leaders, good to see you here today. And we are here to talk about the new and the next in interviewing technology. What's going on out there? What are companies using? And what are some of our clients using that we may or may not be aware of, or our clients may not be aware of these yet, but they will be soon because this technology is just growing and being used more and more. So, is your as you're joining me, feel free to say hello in the chat. If you're watching the replay, go ahead and hit replay. As you know, we come in here every week talking about the new and the next. And today is not going to disappoint because we're going to be talking about some of these new AI technologies that employers are using, and even some non AI tools that employers are using to do interviews. And then how can we help our clients be more successful? And one little, kink in the chain that may mean employers stop using so many virtual, interviews. Hello, it's good to see you. Thank you for saying hello. Feel free to say hi as you're joining in. So let's talk about some of the trends and what we're seeing in interviews today and in interview technology specifically. And I just want to share with you a few of the items that I found as I was doing some research. I was doing some research to see what's next, what are we seeing, what's going on in this space. And so let me see if it will let me share this with you. I shared this also today on LinkedIn, but this is some data that I found, and I will dink in here a little bit, make it a little bigger. So this is some data that's from Resume Builder, and what they found, they pulled 1,000 HR recruiter hiring manager types, and they found that 10% of companies are using AIs in interviews today. So not a huge amount, but there are some individuals using these technologies in interviewing today. And then what you see is that we've got 43% that plan to start using it by 2024. And this fourth bar here is 32% that don't have any plans to use AI in interviewing, which may be comforting to some of our clients. But we do have this 43% that is either already using it, planning on using it this year, or planning on having it integrated by 2024. So does that surprise you? I'd love to hear if you thought maybe more employers were already using it. And as I said, you've got 10% that are already using it, and then 43% that total plan to start using it by 2024 if they're not already. Does that surprise you or not? Love to hear your thoughts on that. And love to hear if you've had any of your clients go through an interview that they thought was an AI interview, although we'll see here in a minute that they may have had an AI interview but didn't know it. So this is just one piece of the puzzle, right? AI is just one tool that may be used in interviews. What we saw before this, I'll just scroll here. So in Job Vite's 2021 research, they saw that 61% of hiring processes were going to use a combination of virtual and in-person recruiting. And this was kind of after things calmed down from COVID in early 2020, it was April 2020, there was a Gartner study done that showed 86, I actually misquoted the data here, but it was 86% of employers were using virtual interviews at that point. Well, obviously, right? They had to. And so this data, the 61%, kind of shows that it did stay when people went back in person, but it didn't stay completely. You had a lot of people that went back to in-person interviewing and or in that kind of combo approach of hybrid and in person. Surprised that it's only 10% that are currently using AI. Yeah, me too a little bit. I thought it might be more. And that was fairly recent data. Again, 1,000 employers in that resume builder research there. So we know that companies are starting to use these technologies. They're starting to figure out how to integrate it, and they're starting to follow regulations that say they have to tell people that they're using it. That's what the majority of regulations are around right now, is being transparent about the fact that they're using these technologies, whatever that might look like, and then more in Europe than in the US, but being clear about how they're storing any video or any of that in their process. How are they storing that? How long do they store it? All of those things are more what the regulations are around is transparency of use and then transparency of the data that you're keeping. How are you keeping it? How long are you keeping it, et cetera. So that's what I'm seeing more of the regulations talk about right now. Love to hear what other talk you all are seeing around those pieces. So we know that AI is happening in the interview. We know that it's coming down. I also found this other article that I found interesting. I'll just share this with you really quick. So this is an article from VidCruiter, and it just goes through how AI interview works. It says that VidCruiter is actually not using AI in their interview process right now, but you can see it's, they're using the conversational AI to facilitate the conversation, transcribing it. This is an important piece. We're going to come back to that. Remember that transcribing piece. So they're transcribing that text, and then the AI is using that to ask its questions back. What I've seen some recruiters talking about is how they're using ChatGPT in this way, whether they're using it written or talking, that you could use ChatGPT to create this same thing. If you were really savvy, you wouldn't necessarily need an external system. You could put it into ChatGPT, set up the prompts correctly, and then it could interview that person back and forth. The part of this that I found interesting is that 72% of candidates thought they spoke to a recruiter even when they were notified up front that the chatbot was a virtual assistant. I found that really interesting. So the systems are being transparent, and then also um, being able to make those connections. We'll talk about how we can help our clients that are in transition because that is a big part of it. So if we know these are happening, we know people are seeing these AI interviews, maybe not even paying attention to the fact that it's an AI interview, or even just in a virtual interview, what do they need to do differently? Before we go into what the positive things are that they might want to do differently, let's talk about one technology that is kind of turning the tables a little bit, and people are starting to figure out how they could use technology during an interview to come up with answers. This I don't really understand how this would work, but it's there, it's available. People have started to use it in some ways. There's this system that is called eCout, and it's right now, it's just in GitHub. It's very techy. It doesn't, it's not something that you or I could probably use right now. But if you have very technical job seekers, they may have heard of this and they may be using it. And so this tab, I'm not going to try to play the video because I'm not quite sure how the sound would work. But it has this little video. It's called eCout. Let me put it in the chat, and then if someone else wants to drop it in the chat if you don't see this, because I know that in some systems you don't see the things I dropped in the chat. So I'll add it to my screen, and then you can also share it in the chat if you don't see it in the chat wherever you're watching. On LinkedIn, it never captures those. But this system will generate interview answers as the interviewer is asking the question. You could do this in ChatGPT, slower, right? And it would work if you want to just play around with it. But ChatGPT will come up with interview answers to questions. And if you put in the person's resume, you put in some of their information, it will use that information to come up with answers. Now, I still don't recommend that by any means because it's going to miss a lot of what they're saying. We'll talk about how we could use ChatGPT in a better way here in a few minutes. But this is something that is available. You can see on this page that it doesn't have a ton of usage yet. Over here on the right, you can see that it has, 4,000 people have given it, or no, 4.4, yeah, 4,000 people have given it stars. So it's not a huge adoption, but it'll be interesting to see as we look at more of this. And a few recruiter places have said, will this mean the end of virtual recruiting because people can use these tools and come up with an answer live, real time, while we're interviewing them and be sharing that answer with people. And I thought, well, I don't know. It's very technical right now. It's still going to give you an answer that you're not familiar with, even if it uses your resume and stuff. If you haven't practiced it ahead of time, you're going to be very obviously reading this answer from your computer. I just don't see how it would help someone, but it's there. It's interesting. Recruiters are talking about it, and some of your high tech clients might be messing around with either this tool or with ChatGPT to do the exact same thing, hopefully as a preparation tool, not as I'm going to try doing this while I'm live with the interviewer tool. But it's there. It's interesting. It's something for us to be aware of. Um, if anybody happens to have a client that's used it, let me know. So what should they do? That's maybe not something we would recommend that they do, but it's available. What can they do to be more effective as they're interviewing with these technologies? The first thing, and this goes into that mindset category, is to be careful about how judgmental we are that companies are using this. So I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, if a company's using that, I wouldn't interview with them." Well, let's kind of break it down. Why might they be using that? One, they might be using it because they get a lot of candidates. That's my first assumption. You wouldn't use something like this that does decrease kind of the flow of candidates unless you had a large candidate pool. So you may not want to apply, I guess, if it's a large pool. Two, what I heard from candidates during my previous 15 years of doing this was, if I could only get in front of them, if I could only have the opportunity. This is a way that companies saw, hey, we can give people more opportunity. Now, we might not like the mechanism that they are choosing to use it to do it, but now instead of phone interviewing maybe 7 to 10 people, I can virtually interview or have, one-way interviews with a ton of people, kind of unlimited depending on the technology that I'm using, right? Anybody who's qualified, I could have do a virtual interview. The other thing is that I think we see this as replacing an interview, but for a lot of companies, it might not actually be replacing the interview. It's replacing the screening questions. So I don't know about you, but I used to have clients that would come in and they have a list of 10 questions that they had to answer before they went further in the application process. And this wasn't like checkbox questions. This was, tell us about a time you did this or answer this question. They were more essay type questions. And this was director level in the tech space where I had some clients coming in that had to answer these questionnaires before they could move forward in the space. Well, instead of doing that, now companies are doing these maybe one-way interviews where it allows them to get people faster and to not have people writing. So you could say that it's saving clients time because now instead of writing answers to 10 questions or whatever, they're doing that via these one-way interviews. Now, when companies are using it that way, and I've heard this from recruiters since, I don't know, 2000 and was before my son was born. So 2015, 2016, when they were first talking about these technologies, what they do is that they transcribe the person's answers. And so we are all over here focused on our video, which is important. But I got to tell you, no one's looking at your video unless your content scores well in that automated interview, because it's the content that's getting scored first. And just like your resume, if the content isn't aligned with what they're looking for, they may not go back and look at that video because they're looking at the content score, they're looking at the transcript first and then deciding who they're going to go and look at the videos for. At least that was what I've heard from recruiters. Probably doesn't work the same in everyone's process, but that makes sense. They're transcribing it, they're scoring it. They're going to look at that first, skim those first, and then go perhaps watch the videos for the individuals who rise to the top in the content piece. So we've got to make sure that our content is dialed in. And there's a few different ways that we can do that. So we can use some of the tools that people are using to do preparation. We can use ChatGPT. So I wouldn't have it write my answers for me, but I could put in an interview question and my answer, or at least, the bullet points, the essence of my answer, and have ChatGPT tell me what's missing. What are the gaps? What else might a recruiter want to see? And ChatGPT actually does a pretty good job of that. So if you give it the question, you give it your answer, it would give you that opportunity to make to show the connections. Um, Definitely some challenges for many different reasons in these, but you think about it, before when they had to write the answers to questions, you would have people that were gonna struggle in that framework too. I kind of wish they would let people choose, like, you could write your answers or you can submit a video, especially if they're kind of treating them the same and scoring them, and it really, well, it would matter, but it could give other people that have some kind of disability, the opportunity to do that as well. But there's an opportunity here for our clients to practice what they're saying, to have it ready to go, and to really focus in on that content, again, using some of that technology to have the practice prepare and give you some feedback. Now, there are other tools that you can use to get feedback. We talk about these in one of our programs. I'll just bring it up here. The ones on the top are some of the ones that companies are using, and you can take a screenshot of that if you want to. But this is some of the systems that companies are using: HireVue, Spark Hire, My Interview. This is definitely not an extensive or complete list by any means, just some of the more popular ones. So these are some of the ones that our client or the companies might be using. And I'm going to go on to here the ones that can help a client prepare. And this is more specific to interview. We're going to look at a few other tools here that aren't as specific to interviewing yet, but these are some of the ones that you can use to prepare for a virtual interview. Video Bio Recruiter. So it's Video Bio Recruiter has an interview prep system. And what I like about that one is that they have a employer system where employers are using the tool, and then they're kind of feeding that insight and data back into their prep tool for individuals. And the individuals can use that same tool to see the same competencies that recruiters are judging them on. And it's a one-way automated test. So you can see how that technology works. You can record your interview, you can see how it would be scored. And many of these do, kind of similar things. And then there's a couple of tools that we've been using in our or learning about more in our space that are not specific to interviewing, but man, they have a lot of value. And one of them is, well, maybe I'll just share this whole thing. So one of them is Udly. So Udly, they did, come to our Career Thought Leaders Symposium and share and demo their tech. They're hopefully also going to be doing a little demo during our Tech Jam that's coming up here in July 18th through the 21st. And so this is not specifically for interviewing, but it does awesome feedback. It actually suggests better ways to say things. It will It'll do follow-up questions like an AI system would. So it'll give you a follow-up question to an interview question. And I know a lot of our coaches are experimenting and using Udly with their clients right now, because you can share things back and forth. Your client can practice and you can see the feedback and all of those great features that they have. A very similar technology that I haven't had too much time to play with, but it's very similar, is Speako. And so you could play around with both of those and see which ones might be helpful to your clients. Again, these aren't as specific to interviewing as the ones that we were just showing, but you do have Udly and Speako that are options to help your clients get some feedback and some AI generated feedback on their interviews. So we need to prepare. Think about those questions. You can use ChatGPT and other research to figure out what types of questions people might ask for this role. Then you can come up with your answers, put them into ChatGPT and have it tell you what's missing, how could you make this better. And you can also use systems like Udly and Speako to do that, or Video Bio Recruiters interview prep tool. They'll give you that feedback on what are you missing, etc. when you think about the preparation piece and you're using this technology to do it, it is important you put in your answers, your stories. You can have it add more or use your stories to write an answer, but you don't want it to write answers from its pool of data because that's not your stories and it's going to be confusing. So you put in your data, you have it either help you write the story for the interview, challenge action results or star or whatever format you use. It can write a story using your data to do that, and then you can make it better, ask it for feedback, ask it for, what else am I missing, or what other better ways could I phrase this, and it will give you that data, and all of the systems do that. Then it's of course great to have us as a coach because we can give the human feedback in addition to the AI feedback that people might be getting, and they get the best of both worlds. This isn't an either or who's better than what. It's there's tools that people can use to really get rich feedback and to maybe get feedback before they even come into an interview with us, a mock interview with us, so that they're starting off in a better place. And I love to use the technology to help them do that. Yeah, so people using Udly, love it. And if you missed some of this, don't worry, you can always go back to the recording on our YouTube channel, the Career Thought Leaders YouTube channel. You'll find the full ones of these on the live tab. And then we're making some cuts, playing around with some AI tools to make cuts and put those into our other videos as well with some of the most important information. So some of you are using these. I love that. If you haven't had a chance to try one of those tools, go and test some of them out and come back and let us know what you think, whether that's ChatGPT or you want to test out, the Video Bio Recruiter interview prep system or Udly, Speako. Let us know what you think. And we will be, as I said, piloting and seeing some of those tools during our tech jam on coming up in July. If you're interested in that, drop me a note. We'll get the link ready for that as soon as we've got some specific texts ready for our time slots. And then again, that will be in July. We're excited about that. Thinking about your clients then as they're in the virtual interview, three things. Well, first was judgmental. We talked about that. To leave the judgment at home. It's just not helping anybody. If you don't want to interview with a company that uses virtual interviews, then don't. But once you're there, if you've decided to do it, you're just going to kind of leave that judgment back or it's going to get in your way. It's really going to get in your way of that connecting piece because even though we're virtual, we still want to think about connecting. So thinking about the camera as a person, people put pictures there, they put an eye there, whatever it does to help you think about that camera as a person, because you want to connect with that camera. And even when I'm doing videos, I think about, Cheryl on the other side of that camera and I'm talking to Cheryl or talking to Robbie. That helps me and it will help your clients to think about how they've got that connection to the other person. And then their content and realizing that content is still king even when you're talking about an virtual interview, especially when you're talking about an AI interview. But when you have that content down first, I always recommend people practice audio first, get that audio down, listen to what they're actually saying before they bring the video in. Because once you bring the video in, that's all anybody's paying attention to. What do I look like? Or what am I doing with my hair? And all of that is important, but it's only important when you actually have the content down first. So audio practice first, or Udly practice first, or Zoom practice and have it transcribed, and then have ChatGPT analyze it, right? Whatever you can do to get the content down first, then you can focus on the connection when you're actually in that virtual interview. I hope that's helpful. I look forward to hearing some other thoughts that you all have around these technologies. Next week, watch your email. We might be a little bit earlier next week so that I don't miss my flight. I'm going to the National Career Development Association conference next week to do a couple of presentations there. And if you are also going, please let me know. I'd love to meet up with you in person there at the NCDA conference. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.